Hello, you're listening to the Battle Buddies podcast. In this episode, I get the chance to interview Sensei Matt Rosalez of the Max Academy of Martial Arts. And although we had an absolute blast filming the episode, it was so long we decided to break it up into two parts. So what you're listening to now is part 1 of the Battle Buddies podcast, episode 4, featuring Sensei Matt Rosalez. Enjoy the episode. Alright, welcome back to the Battle Buddies podcast, where we believe that you should not take on the world alone. I'm unfortunately not joined by Adam today. He's out of town, but I am very happy to welcome our first guest onto the podcast, and which better guest than sort of the man who started this all. I'm joined today by Sensei Matt Rosalez of the Max Academy of Martial Arts. Matt has been teaching martial arts since 1999. He holds 2 black belts, one in Okinawan Karate and one in Taekwondo. He's also a certified Krav Maga instructor, as well as Satori Alliance certified. Matt graduated from San Francisco State in 2011 with a bachelor's degree, which assisted him in creating the wonderful business that we have today. Now he, as well as the business, has been a part of the Professional Martial Arts College and has also given lectures for it on how to bring your business from part-time gig to full-time passion. Sensei Matt, how are you doing today?
Life is good, man.
I thought it was appropriate that I would bring you on, because I think there's no Battle Buddies podcast without you, I'd say. I think that in a lot of ways you have started this, and we have a lot to thank you for. So thank you. Thanks for coming on the show.
I think you're giving me way too much credit, but I really appreciate that.
A lot of people listening know who you are, but for those people out here who maybe don't know as much of the history behind what we do here, could you walk us through what is the Max Academy of Martial Arts and how has it become so influential in our culture?
Yeah, the Max Academy of Martial Arts is my idea of blending a variety of martial arts in a way that is effective, but also fun. And when I say effective, I don't mean something like in the ring. I mean effective on the street. And that's why we started, learning Krav Maga and implementing that into what we do. I started this because I wanted to make sure people could maximize what their lives could be, hence the name, the Max Academy of Martial Arts. In fact, we started as Max Martial Arts, and I liked that it had an acronym of MMA, which is neat, which is better than the current acronym, which I think is what, MAMA?
MAMA.
Yeah, it's not as great. Yeah, so the Max Academy is a place that I wanted people to learn character. I wanted them to learn leadership. I wanted them to understand fitness. I wanted them to understand that they could do more with martial arts than what I was taught when I was younger.
Could you walk us through the process that you took to go from, I know you've talked about this in ProMac, the process you took to go from a part-time instructor to a full-time businessman? Yeah,
that process consists of a lot of just failure. I tried stuff. I tried different iterations of the business, different iterations of the curriculum, different ideas that eventually would stick. So what I did is I broke off from my last organization, and I ended up, a lot of people ended up asking me where I was going. I said, I'm not leaving town, I'm staying here, and I'm going to start my own business. I tried to be ethical about it by not broadcasting that in the middle of my classes or whatever. Well, I was still working for the previous company, but people asked me, and so when they found out, they followed me. So I started this by renting out elementary school cafeterias, gymnasiums, things like that, and multi-purpose rooms. And then we would meet together, we'd come together, and we would do kind of what we were doing in the old organization, just without their oversight. And I tried that for a while, and I didn't really like where it was going. I didn't like that it was kind of the same thing. And so I said, I need to educate myself. I need to learn what are the best practices in this industry. So I went to what is called the Martial Arts Super Show, which is a big event in Las Vegas that they do every year.
Where you met Chuck Norris, right?
Well, yeah, I did. I did meet Chuck Norris and a variety of other martial arts celebrities, Ric Flair and people like that. It was really interesting. But anyway, this organization taught me how other martial arts businesses that were very successful were doing it. And I emulated a lot of their habits. And I found the Professional Martial Arts College through there. I found the Satori organization that Dave Kovar runs, and I signed up to work with them, and I realized that they had a lot of things that I needed to know. The least of which being training instructors. Like, how do I train my instructors to be the best instructors they possibly could be? And Dave Kovar is known as the teacher of teachers, so he taught me how to do that. And we utilize their program even now to educate the instructors. So that was crucial. Once I joined ProMac, it was like a turning point for us. It took about a year, 2 years or so of hard work before we were able to, get our own location, which was in a garage, in a warehouse. That didn't even have a front.
Start.
It was a good, there's good memories associated with it. I know that you guys probably enjoyed it, but I don't think parents did very much.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I think for us it was sort of a step up because we had been moving from location to location. It could have been dirtier and nastier and smaller, and we still would have loved it because it was our first permanent location, really.
Yeah.
It was our first location where we didn't have to pack everything up and walk out and then bring it all back in and do it again.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about all the packing up, throwing it all in the back of my 4Runner and trying to
See,
take it from my house.
I missed a lot of that. Maybe thankfully, but I missed a lot of that because I was an instructor at that time.
Right.
But I do remember the amount of school hopping. How many schools do you think we went to, or gyms do you think we hit?
One of our clients, Andrea Balderrama, who's been with us for a very long time, was able to recall almost all of them. And I can't remember all of them, but I know I can name a few of them. Pioneer Elementary School, we were at Cray Elementary School, we were at least one church for a short period of time, Resurrection Church. We were at a place in Antioch called Carmen Dragon Elementary School. And I do believe there was at least one more school. I think we went to Bristow for a short period of time, which is a middle school. And that's just all of that. I can't believe we even held on to clients doing that, going from one location to another.
Yeah, I remember my mom would say, "Oh yeah, it's closer to us this time. It's less of a drive."
Oh my God,
let's go.
This is not. I mean, for all the people listening, this is not how you run a business. You don't jump from one location to another. But if you do have clients that will follow you when you look like a fly-by-night operation that may not be there next week, that can be a testament to. I mean, we had something good going.
That's a good sign. If you have that loyalty, that's a good sign. That's
I mean, I got to be honest. I don't know if I would follow a business that did that. So
fair.
I'm really impressed that people did follow us.
Yeah. What do you think the numbers were like back then, as far as what they are today? Were they what percentage of students do you think we had then versus now?
I think when we were school hopping, the height of our popularity was somewhere in the range of 75 clients, which I got to be honest, that's super impressive for a hopping around, organization. If you don't have a home and you can have 75 clients follow you, that's pretty good. But about 50 was the average, and that was enough for me to experiment with and do different iterations of the business. And I mention the iterations a lot because because you've been through a bunch of it. We change things, and this is not a normal martial arts thing to do. Martial arts is steeped in tradition, and so changing things is sometimes resisted in the culture. It can be considered toxic by other martial arts organizations, so definitely not normal what we did. But I enjoy trying things and experimenting things with things, because then we can throw out the things that don't work. We can keep the things that do work, and we can change those things to make them even better. And I think that's how martial arts should progress. I mean, isn't that what Bruce Lee did, right? He combined a bunch of different ideas and concepts of martial arts, and he told people to keep playing with it and keep changing it. And that's what Jeet Kune Do comes from. And Jeet Kune Do now, it doesn't even look like it did when he founded it. It's different. And so that's kind of the philosophy I was following, even though I wasn't necessarily trying to be Bruce Lee. I'll never be able to be Bruce Lee.
That would be pretty cool, but yes. So according to, I was reading this article from Forbes the other day, almost half of new businesses, I know you've talked about this before, but almost half of new businesses fail within the first 5 years. And I didn't know this one, but what is it? A third of businesses make it to 10 years. Only a third make it to 10 years. And I've heard even more steep estimates. And this was a study done in 2018. I can't imagine what it is now, but we are now hitting our 12-year mark coming up, which is super exciting. What can you attribute to this success, especially in a time such as now where so many businesses have suffered or even gone under?
It is by the grace of God that we were able to survive the pandemic, especially considering the rules that California put upon the businesses, especially Contra Costa County. This was the most difficult era. So, pandemic excluded, we survived before that because we created a community.
Yes.
The community thrived, and people found that we were a hub of connection. They enjoyed coming here and talking to their other adult friends. The kids enjoyed coming and having fun with us and meeting their friends here. And, I started calling it the Max community and the Max family because I knew this was more than just a martial arts training facility. This was a social place. And it just broke my heart to see that during the pandemic, we could not allow it to be such. And, would I do it again? Yes, we got to save lives and we got to try to prevent the transmission of disease, but there was great cost to keep the place open. I don't know how small businesses survived this pandemic in this area. I don't know how the restaurants did it. I do know how the martial arts businesses did it. They ignored the rules.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make a judgment call. I don't mean to make your podcast political because that's not at all what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about this was difficult for small businesses, no matter what side you're on.
Oh, yeah.
on that topic. So I attribute our survival to the grace of God alone and the strength of the community that we founded. Yeah. The instructors were crucial in that. I think the instructors tried to check on the kids regularly as they came to class, and I think that the parents realized how helpful that was. But yeah, I don't really know how we survived when we were at different schools. I just was trying to talk to parents and give them what they needed and trying to make kids' lives change. And when we were hopping around from school to school early on, I'm not really sure what made us survive other than that we were dirt cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, though, there was still a sense of community there. I remember back in the day when I was an intermediate belt working with some of the new instructors with you, that they did a lot of the same things that I do now. Of course, a lot of them trained me,
sure,
which is a huge benefit. But even before we had the Satori principles, as helpful as they are, they still knew to give common courtesies, say hi, be involved, invested in
right.
the students' lives. So, yeah, I think community is definitely a big part of it. Would you say that's sort of the core ethos? I'm looking at the wall behind you, and it
right.
says Max Family.
Right.
Do you think that's something that a lot of businesses lack, and if they did that, they would be a little better off?
I think the businesses that do best, they are good at making people visible. A lot of people are invisible in life. You can go to a restaurant and they might serve you, but I don't know if they see you. You can go to college somewhere and you could attend the class and never speak to anyone. It's those that make you heard, make you seen, those that make you feel like you're a part of the family. Those ones do a lot better, yeah. I think it's missing in many respects, yes. It's that Target, Walmart type of mentality we want. And a lot of people like that invisibility, right? And I don't really want you to see me. I don't want you to talk to me. I want to go to the self-checkout and I want to get out of here. Yeah, that's good, and we all need to adapt to that. In some ways it's good, but in some ways it's very, very bad. Churches are that way too. A lot of, I look at how some churches don't greet their newcomers and they miss an opportunity. You're supposed to be, we're spiritual people, whether we like it or not. We all have a yearning and a longing to connect.
Yes.
And I don't know why you wouldn't take advantage of that as a business. And when I say take advantage, I don't mean capitalize on it, make more money. Why don't you try to connect with people so that you can fulfill your mission? Everyone should have a mission. And Max has a mission. We want to empower people. We want to inspire people. We want to make sure that these people can protect themselves. We can't do that if we don't connect with them and their families.
Yeah. On the lines of, I suppose, the pandemic, I know this is not your favorite topic, but somehow it always keeps coming back. Now that we're, I suppose, I don't want to jinx anything, but sort of coming out of the tail end of a 2-year ordeal. What
21 months at this point, right?
21 months. Holy moly. That's
actually, we're almost at 22 months.
22 months, yeah. What would you say, though, as we've gone through, sort of back to how we survived, but a little different, What would you say are some of the highlights and lowlights, the moments you saw that really gave you hope as we obviously made it through the uncertainty? What would you say are some of those moments that stick out for you?
This is really hard for me, Gabe, because this is a hard subject for me because I feel like I've struggled with my mental health during the pandemic. I'm a very social person.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to follow normal principles that I use during normal times. Be vulnerable so that people can understand that you're authentic. And so in my vulnerability, I would tell people I was struggling. And what they would hear was whining. And that was a low light. Yeah. I was not trying to whine. I was trying to be vulnerable and say, this is hard. I'm not sure how I'm going to make it out of this. I'm not sure if the business will survive. I'm not sure that I will be in this area when the pandemic is over because I'm not sure that this is something that I can do. People didn't want to hear that. They wanted strength during that time instead of vulnerability, and I didn't have it to offer them because I didn't know what was going to happen. The only strength I had was I do have a deep, abiding belief that things are under God's control in some way, even if I don't like where he's going with it.
Even if we can't understand where it's going.
Well, his ways are beyond ours, right? And I do believe that, and I do trust him. And so it's hard for me to reconcile that with the idea that I have a responsibility to do something during this time. So I was struggling a lot. And I remember somebody I look up to telling me, after I kind of just unloaded a little bit of it, just like trying to get it off my chest, he said to me, well, you got to toughen up. You got to just, you just got to go after it. And you got to get, got to work hard and do what you can. And I was like, okay, yes, I'm doing that. But in this moment, I'm being vulnerable and telling you where my heart lies. And really, he wasn't having that. So, I respect him still. It was not like a turning point for our relationship. I get what he was getting at. But yeah, that was hard. Things that gave me hope, I should focus more on the things that gave me hope. My instructor stuck with me even when they didn't quite understand all of the rules that I was trying to put in place. Most of my instructors stuck with me during that. The clients we have tended to understand up until we pushed on. It wasn't us. The county has a vaccine mandate where we have to check vaccine cards, and a lot of people thought that was a bridge too far. And I understand that. Like I have a libertarian streak as well. I don't want the government involved in what I'm doing. I want to do what I want to do. But also, I don't understand health. I don't understand like public health and how that works. I hope the quote that you pull out of this is not Sensei Matt does not understand health. I don't understand public health.
Yeah,
like
public health.
I'm not educated in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's. I'm not sure how much of a downer you want your podcast to be, so I'm not going to dwell on any of this stuff. But that was a hard part. It was a hard part. Highlights. I don't know, Gabe. You tell me. Like, what were some highlights for you?
For me.
Yeah, and during the pandemic,
he played the Uno reverse card. I would say one of the biggest highlights for me was the first moment. Every victory, I suppose, for me was massive because every victory where I could get a little bit closer to the kids, or a little bit more fist bumps, a little bit more conversation, that was big for me. I remember when we first hit Zoom, and I went, "Oh man, what are we doing here?"
Yeah,
and that was definitely a low light for me. I think the whole Zoom era. I'm very glad that it is over, ending. I think that while it definitely served a purpose, once again, that community aspect was lacking. I think one of the biggest victories for me was the first time we had the students back in the gym. I remember seeing them and going, "Oh, let's go teach a class." And I went out there and had one of my favorite classes. And I remember all the mats were sectioned off. We had to social distance the kids and all, but it was still a community. And I could still talk to them and, punch the air at them and mess around with them and give them that community back, especially because I think at that age, that's when they're so, the 4 to 6 range, they're developing so much. And so it's so important that they have a sense of community. I worry sometimes, maybe you can chime in on this, but I worry sometimes, what is the next generation, the generation coming up now, what is it going to look like? Because they've grown up in a time obviously it's happened before in history, but they've grown up in a time where communication with other people is almost not happening.
Right.
Where they talk with each other so little, they barely get to hang out with their friends. They have to be by themselves almost all day. They do school on a screen. I wonder, do you think that's going to affect our culture at all?
This is something I worried about at the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm really glad you spoke about all your highlights.
There's many more.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. No, you're right. Every time something loosened up, every rule loosened up, I do remember euphoria. Like, I've never been so happy that I could hug a child.
Yes.
Because these kids, they need that. They need the little ones you talk about. They literally need that. That's how they communicate. Sensei Nick talks about how they come up to him at the grocery store and hug him randomly.
Yeah.
That's how that age is. They need it, and they don't need it as much when they're a little bit older, but they still do it. So that was really helpful to me. But yeah, I'm worried about the social development of our kids. But what I saw was resilience. That's what I saw. I saw that they were able to bounce back pretty quick. A lot of them, not all of them. I do worry, because this, you've helped me. Outside of our facility, we get high schoolers and middle schoolers that just got out of school, and they flood the area because this is a very close business parking lot that's near them, so they kind of use this as their hangout area, like it's a public park or something, even though literally a public park is right next to us.
Right down the street.
Yeah, and I don't mind that they want to be here. They need community too. Yes. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is the... imagine being in 5th grade when the pandemic hit, and 5th graders have a certain developmental, they're at a certain level.
Yeah.
And then now they're in 7th grade, and they didn't get that social development that they needed. So they're more like a 5th grader than they are a 7th grader, but they have a bigger body. And so they are given this freedom, this independence, and they haven't had all of the checks and balances that happen when other kids are, butting heads against them socially. They're getting that now. And so they act in a way that's very immature for their age. Same for the high schoolers. High schoolers, if they're in 9th grade now, they're acting like a 7th grader. It's problematic. And I see that as a huge problem, but I think they'll catch up. I have a lot of hope for these kids. And I guess that's my superpower. Boundless hope and optimism for the next generation. I know that they can be better. I do not like when... I don't want to throw any one generation under the bus, because every generation is guilty of this. I've heard it from boomers, I've heard it from millennials, I've heard it from Gen X, where they always like to dunk on the next generation. This generation doesn't understand this or that or whatever was developmental to them.
It's going to be the worst generation ever.
I despise
I think they've
that.
been saying that since like the Revolutionary War time.
No, literally, there's documentation, there's evidence that shows that every generation hates the generations under it, and I don't understand that, because
I think it makes sense though. So my business professor said that old people are grumpy and they're angry at the young people, and here's why. The reason they're angry at younger people is because they see the young people doing the exact same thing that they did, and they've already forgotten that they did those stupid things, and they see the young people doing the stupid things, and they go, well, I already know I shouldn't do that, and so why are you doing that? And so they see those young people doing the exact same things and go, this generation is just so stupid. They
there's
don't
truth
understand.
There. Yeah, there's truth there. Do you think also that maybe there's new stupidity to be discovered?
Oh, definitely.
And
definitely.
I think
there's
that this
always
generation...
new stupidity.
Yeah. You mentioned before that, there's a lot of screen time for kids. There's a lot of, they don't have the social aspect and everything. But I think you've played video games. Like, you mentioned Halo and stuff like that. Halo was an interesting turning point when I started watching that be played online by high school kids that I was doing ministry with at the time. They bonded over killing each other with the sword on Halo, or, shooting each other in Call of Duty. It was how I got to hang out with some of the high school guys that I'm still friends with. Some of them. It's interesting. They discovered a way to make virtual a real community. I guess that's where Zuckerberg and people like him are going with the whole metaverse type of thing. Like, the virtual world can be as real as the real world. In a way, that's true. Our experiences are real. But I think here's where you and I will have a lot of common ground. there is something to be said about sharing the same air with somebody else. When contact is made, real physical contact is made, there's something different that happens that cannot happen in the virtual setting.
Yeah.
I think that the virtual setting is a way to shield us from some of the realities, that perhaps spiritual realities that happen when we interact with one another physically in the real world in real time.
I think touch is super important. I think that's probably my love language.
Sure.
If I were to guess, I think that it builds connection so much more quickly than just words. And this is something that has been new to me. I've been having to start understanding. I think that was a mouthful. The community built in, like you said, video games. That was something that's new to me, because I always figured, what good do these do to society? But I guess they actually do have some use.
They can.
Some use. There is a limit, like all things in society.
Sure. I won't share who it is, but there's a family member of mine that plays a very simple game on her phone, and she interacts with people around the world with this, and she's been able to really speak truth into their lives through it. It's a very simple, easy to play game, and they have a very strong community they created from it, and I've just been blown away that games can do
so cool.
that. I mean, and of course martial arts can do that. Anything can be a vehicle for that kind of connection. And isn't that what life is really about? I mean, I don't understand when people want to be alone all the time, unless they have like trauma or something.
That's
right?
True.
Like that I get. But someone who says I would be fine if I didn't have to speak with people at all again. Like, I've met some people this way, and I go, well, I'm not sure if you're being authentic or if that's like hyperbole. I'm not sure, but you need people.
Yeah.
Sometimes people can make you better, and they make you the best version of yourself. You discover things about yourself you never would have discovered in the comfort of your living room holding a controller.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know. I think that okay, so I read, I forget the name of this book, The Joy of Movement or something like that. I can't remember the name of the book right now. It's fantastic, and they were talking about group exercise. And I thought it was fascinating, the psychology behind this. And when people start moving to a beat and they can start doing it in sync, you can feel like one unit. You can feel like one thing. You can feel like if you're part of I think the demonstration she used was if you're part of like a row team, right? A canoeing or whatever, I forget what they're called. But you're part of this team, and you all have to row together. You can feel like the boat is a part of you. And I find that fascinating. Yeah. Like, once we start all moving in motion together, we can find some real joy and a real connection to the world around us. And I don't mean that like we are one with the world, we are one with the universe type of a thing. I mean it more like, why is it that when I'm using a Kali stick that I can feel like it's an extension of my arm? Why is it that when I am doing martial arts techniques to the count of an instructor, I can feel like we're all moving together like an army marching to battle? That's so weird and amazing, and I love it, and it's something that God built into us. Yeah. This communal thinking that I don't think we utilize it enough in society, and I think people miss out on it because they would rather, they'd rather be alone. Yeah. They'd rather, like, if I'm going to work out, I want to work out by myself. Like, I get that. Like, I'm that way a lot. But have you ever done a Peloton class? Like, you're not really with these other people, but you're with those people, and you move with them, and it's amazing.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about suffering together.
Yes, suffering. You understand.
Well, I've had plenty of days where I come in here and I hit stuff and work out and get super tired by myself. Right. I'd say the most memorable ones are always the ones where I'm in here and I am pounding a bag into the ground and my arms are burning, and I look up and I'm panting and I can barely breathe, and I see 5 other individuals doing the exact same thing, the exact same level of tired.
That's right.
That's a lot more powerful, I think, for me at least.
Yeah.
Maybe it's different for other people, but for me, that level of community, I always love suffering with other people.
Connection.
Because misery loves company, right?
Well, yeah, and I know that particular phrase, misery loves company, is like It's supposed to be like, well, I'm miserable, so I'm going to make you miserable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I found a lot of joy in the truth of it when we suffer together.
Yeah.
We do grow together. And if only that had happened during the pandemic. If we all had suffered this pandemic as people together united against a virus, I think we would have done better, and we would be happier, and we might even be farther along than we are now. It's unfortunate.
As a people and as a society.
Yeah, for real. We would have developed as individuals and as a society. I agree with you. I think you remember every CROV test you did. Yes, every CROV certification test.
CROV test.
Yeah, because and you remember some of the people that you did with, even though you had no connection with them before you got there. Because they come from around the nation, they'll come to one place, they train, and Katie and Julio rip them up and rip you up alongside with them. In love, if Katie's listening, just so you know, we love you. Julio, we love you. Please don't punish us on the next test.
On level 5.
Yes.
Yep.
So, but you suffer with those people together, and in doing so, you find out what you're made of, but you also get carried by them a little bit. I remember Nick, my brother, literally having to carry me for a moment during the test. I'm an asthmatic, and so my level 1 certification was quite the wake-up call for me and my endurance. And I remember hitting and striking the bag for so long, and then finally I have got nothing left to give. I'm just barely throwing my arms up, and I finally lean forward onto the tombstone that Nick's holding, thinking I'm going to pass out. He holds me up for just a moment, and he looks at me and he says, "Get up, hit it." And he's like, "You can do it." And his words and his will were what carried me to the end, because I could not do anymore. And that's something you don't forget. That's something you bond with these people. I love suffering together. It's so good.
Side note, it's such a gift having siblings suffering with you, I think. I've done every single one of my tests with my brother.
That's right.
And so I definitely understand that. And
that's right.
Roasting him while he's working out and is motivating, It gets you going too, but especially if he's working harder than you are, then you have to amp it up. Something about being in the same room as someone helps. I don't know what it is that separates the feeling of being right next to someone, being screen neighbors and being neighbors. I don't know what that is, that one is so much more superior than the other. I don't know what does that, but I don't know.
I have wondered about this since just before the pandemic, actually. That why is it that when we're in the same room and we're breathing the same air, I've used this phrase earlier in this podcast, why is it that affects us, that it gives us a greater connection? Why is it the church done together physically is so much better than watching it on TV or watching it on Zoom? Like, what is it about singing at the same time as somebody else rather than singing along with? I mean, why do you think people want to go to a concert and sing with their favorite performers, sing alongside them? Because they have to be in the same room with them, synchronized with them, breathing the same air as all these people, moving as one together. There's something amazing and unforgettable about that. If you ever have Nick on this podcast, you talk to him about all the concerts he's been to.
Yeah.
Because he loves the joy of live music together, and there's something about being in the same room singing together that truly moves a person. It's fascinating. I wish I knew more about it. All I want to do is study. That's all I want to do. I want to study, and I want to exercise, and I want to kick people.
Get yoked. Sorry.
Get your gains.
Get those gains.
All I want to do is just study this kind of stuff over and over again and educate people. In fact, that's part of what my purpose statement was going into 2020, ignorant of the pandemic. I decided I wanted to educate people. I know I want to educate people. I decided I was going to make that a part of my purpose statement. I was going to fight ignorance in the world. That's what I said in part of my purpose statement, and that was probably it's good and bad at the same time. Have you ever tried to make somebody realize their ignorance, Gabe?
Yes, we talked about this on I think episode 2. The idea of removing the roof.
Okay.
You've heard this analogy, right? It's a Francis Schaeffer analogy, but he talks about, I'm rehashing stuff
we've
talked about before,
me.
But he talks about how we have this shelter, this roof that is our ignorance of our ignorance, right? Which is the competence ladder.
That's right.
Unconscious incompetence.
That's right.
And when you remove that, now they are prey to the elements that are ignorance, and they can feel those, and that doesn't feel good.
No,
so
that's
people
terrible.
want to feel like they are not ignorant, and so they'll do whatever they can. I'm sure you've experienced this as well.
Absolutely.
And I've met a lot of people who are quote unquote masters at their craft, who are self-proclaimed and don't work hard, and those are the people who, if you try to show them something new, they say, I don't need to learn that. I already know what I need to know. And
Right.
such a devastatingly stagnant place. And I know, sort of going back, and you don't have to talk about this in depth if you don't want to, but going back to part of the reason why you left your previous location, I know when we talked about it before, you mentioned stagnancy as one of the big driving forces, because stagnancy is really regression, is what it is.
I agree. Yeah, and I refuse to be stagnant on most things in my life. I try to push forward. I mean, you can't fight every war at once, right? Like, I look at life as a battlefield, and there's several fronts of the war. Which front am I going to advance today?
Yeah.
I have to pick what I'm advancing right now. So I'm always advancing in my martial arts, and I know for sure that the place that I previously was at was not doing so. And so I had every intention of helping it to do so. I will not name the previous organization because I don't want to dunk on anyone's, if it helped them, great. It helped me for a while, but I will tell you that they had a book that told you how to teach each belt level, and you had to follow it in its 10-week plan, and then it would recycle, and you do it again, and you do it again. And I know that Mary, who also was a part of that previous organization, she told me that she ran into somebody else who was a part of that and was still a part of it. And Mary was laughing about the book, and that person told her that book still exists. That book, they're still teaching out of it. And I was man, this is, this is a decade later. Yeah. How is it that hasn't changed? You have to advance. You have to change. You have to improve, because the world is changing and advancing all around us at all times. Yeah. So yes, I left because they had the boss had anointed me to take over at some point. He, in the future that was undetermined, and he said, "I want you to be able to take it over." And so I started making plans to make myself better and make the organization better, make the martial arts better. And then the 2008 financial crisis hit, and he said to me about 2009, he's like, "I'm gonna take over your classes, because I have to continue going," which I now do not begrudge him, because I understand the money aspect, but those were my classes. He was not involved in them. He didn't do anything other than test people to move up to the higher belts. And I was fascinated that he felt entitled to take them over, but it was his business, so he could. Yeah. So anyway, when he dropped that on me, I went to my wife and I said, "Here's what he said. What should I do?" She said, "You should talk to Cliff, your mentor, who's he was my pastor, but also my boss in ministry at the time." Mm-hmm. And so he told me, "So why don't you just open your own business?" Backtrack for a second here. Let's pause and do an aside. Sandy, my wife, had told me to start my own business long before this. She didn't like the previous organization.
See, I never knew that.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why she's the 51% owner of the
enough.
Max Academy. So, she told me to do this a long time ago, but it wasn't until Cliff told me to do it and confirmed what she said that I really started taking it seriously. And I was in business school at the time, and I was thinking, I don't know how I'm going to do both of these things, and I somehow managed it. And we also were adopting at the same time, so it was really hard. But
I forgot that was at that time. Wow.
Yeah. So we had just bought a house in 2009, at the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, and he drops this bomb on me like, "I'm going to take over your classes." And I said, "Well, when is that happening? Because I got to make a plan. I don't think I'll be able to stay here." And so I made a plan to start a business, and I put it together in a couple of months, just 2 months, and we were ready to go. Yeah. It was hard, but I learned a lot. And it didn't make enough money for us to live off of for maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
And so Sandy had to work a lot up until about 2015. And then she was able to start de-escalating her commitment to her job and start going to school. And now she's a graduate of Berkeley.
Yeah,
and you know,
let's go.
Like life is so weird.
It's pretty crazy.
It's great. It's just so weird, and I wish that we could have avoided some of the suffering, but the suffering defines us. It makes us realize who we are and what we're made of. Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith can develop endurance, and endurance needs to complete its work. So you could be mature and complete, lacking nothing. I think this is a crucial component of my faith that somehow, while it echoes in my head so clearly, somehow during the pandemic, did not resonate with me as loudly. I wish I had used it like a mantra over and over again every day. Maybe it would have helped me.
That's true.
Yeah, but we're doing better now. We can't change the past. We can only change what's before us, and so that's what I'm working on.
It is very sad. I think I could say for my life, I atrophied both spiritually and physically as well. I think that perhaps we're not alone in that, first of all, but
yeah,
if only we use that time wisely. But of course, we can only look to the future.
Sure.
And all we can do with the past is remedy what we did. I do think about, this is super random, I guess, on the topic before, but I think about sometimes, let me rephrase. I think about this a lot. If I did not have a loving mother, and this is so important too, because community, right? Community.
Sure.
There's a point with this. If I didn't have a wonderful mother who said, I was, maybe 8 at the time we moved, something like that, maybe a little older, but if I didn't have a mom who said, I really like Sensei Matt, we're gonna follow him to his new business, I wouldn't even be here right now.
So
I don't know where I would be.
So
probably not at the previous location, but
Yeah.
I don't know where I would be. And so that community, wow, that community is strong.
I love your mom,
Building a
by the
community
way.
is helpful.
She's
great.
always been wonderful. In case she's listening, I hope she knows it, because I know that she's helped a lot of people, and she connects a lot of people. It's rare that you meet somebody like her who's sunshine everywhere she goes. And I think that's important, that we find those types of people. They're going to change lives.
Yeah.
Or we create those types of people, right? Like, you're in the facility. What do you think we're trying to do? We're trying to make sure that this next generation can have as much joy and as much wisdom as somebody like Julie Forsland has.
Yeah, wisdom is important. We talk about that a lot too.
Wisdom's hard when you are young.
Yeah.
And I remember being your age, Gabe, and I remember making a ton of mistakes. And I still make a ton of mistakes, don't get me wrong. They're just different now. And I thought I was wise for my age. And I hate that. I wish I could. I wish I didn't live in a time of social media so that those mistakes are not recorded forever. But I mean, I guess most of the social media I had at the time, though, Gabe, was like MySpace, so that's gone
MySpace.
now. Yeah,
Whoa.
so that's gone now, and I'm grateful. I mean, well, MySpace still exists, but my profile's gone. You won't find it, thank God.
Dang it! I was gonna go look for it, but
I'm sure somebody on the internet somewhere is just like, oh, there's a Google archive page of this, and I'll find Sensei Matt's page. Please don't. I'm
Please
so
don't do
different now than I was. It's like talking to 12-year-old you. Like, imagine you met 12-year-old you. Like, you'd each want to punch each other, right? Like, hey, you need to get it together. Hey, you need to not be so serious. Like, I don't know. I think about that sometimes.
Yeah. 12-year-old me. I have a lot of friends who I've been around since before I was 12, and they can attest to. Yeah, I was such an idiot now, and I think when I to be fair though, probably next year I'm going to say the same thing about this year's me.
Yeah.
So to be fair,
Yeah.
I think that keeps going, but I think there are so many defining moments that made me realize I've been fortunate. Let me back up here. I've been fortunate to realize how dumb I really am. And I think once people really realize that, I've seen some of our students go through some of the same mistakes that I did. And I go, oh, if I could just, I can tell you, but it's not really the same.
Why doesn't this generation get it?
This generation is going to be the worst. But there's so many moments I can think back and go, that was just so stupid.
Yeah.
And I think that part of maturity, though, if I've matured at all since I was 12, I hope I have maybe a little bit. Some of that maturity comes from looking back and saying, wow, you're really stupid back then, right? Socrates was the one who said, true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing.
Yeah.
So the more I can acknowledge my own ignorance, I hope to better myself through that. Wisdom is a complicated thing, for sure.
Yes, and I have only just now begun to plumb the depths of my ignorance. Like, I am so ignorant of so many things, and I wish I had learned this phrase earlier. I am not an expert in that topic, and I've never studied it, so I don't really have a good opinion about that. But from my understanding, this, and then you share your unqualified, not unqualified, but you're not qualified to talk about it, is what I mean. Like, you don't have any expertise in it. I wish more people would learn that. That's what I was telling people at the early part of the pandemic, when they were saying things like, we're going into lockdown and this is the government trying to control us. I would say things to them like, and I'm sorry to keep making it like sound political. It's not, none of this is meant to be political. It's just my musings about it. I think people thought they were experts in either sociology or epidemiology, and they would understand the implications of these things pretty early on. They thought they would understand them, and maybe they had some points, but at the same time, like, you're not an expert. You don't know what this virus can do, and I don't think even the experts knew what the virus could do, so they were just trying to be cautious. So I don't know. We all needed to appreciate expertise a little bit more than we did.
I agree. I think also that while people can have plenty of wise things, I think a lot of people got some things right. A lot of people got a lot of things wrong, though.
Sure. And when we find out that we're wrong, we should change.
You should acknowledge it.
Yeah, you acknowledge it and change directions, which to the credit of those that I don't really appreciate very much in the different administrations, not necessarily even national administration, I'm talking like our local government, I think they have changed. I think they have tried to change the trajectory of where we're going. I mean, the lockdown finally ended at some point. We were able to come inside at some point. We were able to actually have physical contact with one another at some point. Like, every step that we took was a change when they realized, okay, we can be a little bit different now because we learned more. Good. That's what we should do.
That's what we should do, for sure.
Yeah, even though I don't like that you're trying to restrict my business. Keep your hands off my stuff.
Keep your hands off my dang business.
Yeah.
I need to survive. Yeah, I definitely get it, though. I think that part of the... We've talked about this before, so I'm once again rehashing, but part of the reason people hate change is it means you have to change. And that's work, right? Going from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence means that you realize, I have a road ahead of me.
Right.
And people don't like work. I don't like work if I don't have to do it, but you kind of have to learn to do hard stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not an expert in this, but the Dunning-Kruger effect, you know about this?
Yeah, we talked about that last episode.
Oh, good. Wow. Jeez. It's like I listened to your podcast, but I got to be honest, I just did not listen to your podcast. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, so the Dunning-Kruger effect appears to be, where people get a little bit of knowledge about something and think they have a lot of knowledge about it.
Yeah.
And I have seen that in its full force during the pandemic.
Oof, yeah.
It's been really, really bad. Here's something I've been thinking about a lot, Gabe, and I think you'll like this. Humility is so important. And I think of all of the virtues that existed in the past in society, not just ours, but throughout history. Humility is the one that seems to be appreciated the least in our society right now. Strength is honored in humility or uncertainty. God forbid that we're not certain that we're right about something. And if I am not right about it and I realize it later, I'm not going to admit that. Yeah. Like, the humility is lacking and it's only hurting us. Yeah. I do not have so much pride that I cannot give up a thought that I had before or a belief I had before. I can change my beliefs to match new truth. And I think that kind of humility is a massive strength that I don't know why people like to discredit or, I guess, as the Gen Zs say, dunk on.
Dunk on.
I'm trying to learn to speak Gen Z.
Oh
It's very hard.
What was it that we were looking at? Was it? Oh, it's Harry Potter.
Yeah, Harry Potter written in Gen Z.
Oh my word!
It was fantastic.
Oh,
it was fantastic.
It hurt my soul a little bit. I went, is this what language has come to? I'm gonna walk out of here.
I think that if we saw a Lord of the Rings edition that was written in Gen Z, you would throw it across the room.
I might throw it up in the stratosphere, and then I might throw up as well.
You're not a book burner, Gabe, but I think that might make you burn some books.
I've definitely demolished some books before that I was not a fan of. Next question, and this is moving on a little bit to purpose statements.
Oh yeah, that's right.
First of all, could you just define the Max Academy purpose statement? Because I know a lot of people probably don't even know it.
Sure. I have it here on my phone so that I don't mess it up. Okay. So the Max Academy exists to grow confidence, health, and strength by helping members discover what they're capable of through practicing martial arts, self-defense, skills, and improving physical fitness. If you want a short version of it, I like to say empowerment, education, and inspiration.
Yes.
Because I think that those are the key things that wrap up what we're trying to do. I'm always trying to teach people to protect themselves. That's empowerment. But I'm also trying to teach them to think for themselves. That's also empowerment and education. I'm trying to inspire them to understand what they're capable of. If I can inspire them to change this world for the better, I feel like I did well. Not that it's my job to save the world or to train people to save the world, because the more, dear listener, the more you try to save the world, the more frustrated you are going to be. Yeah. You can't save the whole world. All you can do is help your little corner of it. And so I'm going to try to help my community. I'm going to try to help these kids. I'm going to try to help the adults that come here. I'm going to try with every conversation to make a life better. I'm going to try to inspire them to do better themselves. That's the goal of this place. And if we're doing that on some level, I feel like we're successful.
Yeah.
Are you talking about my own personal purpose statement, though?
Yeah, a good question off that, I suppose.
Sure.
What does your personal purpose statement look like, and how does that add up, I suppose, with the business? Are they synonymous? Are they similar?
No, I have to have a separate purpose statement for myself, and I think anybody who runs a business should do that, because the business should not be the owner. I don't think it should. I think it should be greater than the owner, because then the owner's ego will not be intertwined with it. I like everyone else have an ego, and I don't want my ego to infringe upon what you guys are doing as you teach these classes. I don't want you to think about, well, I have to make this about Sensei Matt in some way because he's the owner. That's ridiculous. What a waste of time. Instead, let's make it about changing the lives of the kids.
Thanks for listening to part 1 of the Battle Buddies podcast, episode 4, featuring Sensei Matt Rosalez. If you like that, feel free to stick around for part 2. In that episode, we tackle big issues like the importance of investing in people before educating people, what martial arts does for women, how self-defense pairs with Christianity, and also we'll tackle some of your important, interesting questions. That's all coming up in part 2 of the Battle Buddies podcast, episode 5, featuring Sensei Matt Rosalez. We hope to see you there.